All right, here we go. Welcome in. It is Monday, December the 9th. It's another edition of the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show, powered by WagerTalk.com. I'm Joe Raineri. He is Ralph Michaels. And, of course, a bit of an abbreviated schedule here today. You guys know in college hoops, only 3 games on the card. Kids are, these darn kids. We want to get them paid and everything, but they do have to take these things called exams every now and then, Ralph. So they actually have to pretend like they want to go to school and not just play basketball. So the school makes them take these stupid things called, these finals here in these exams. But that's all right. It gives us a little reprieve to kind of get caught up on everything that happened over the weekend. And there was a lot of college basketball over the weekend, a lot of head scratching going on over the weekend. So it gives us an opportunity to maybe catch up. Those of you just joining us for the first time, kind of get caught up with what's been going on here in college hoops. If you're just starting to get into it now that college football is over, Ralph, it was, you look back on this weekend, it was, the cream is starting to rise to the top, so to speak.
Yeah, we've seen some big upsets the first 3 or 4 weeks of college, but this weekend we didn't have any. The biggest upset was by a 12.5-point dog, and we're seeing those handful of teams that are still undefeated, and we continue to learn. And for those new to the show, we always break down the performances from the night before, and we give you the upsets, and we give you the largest covers. Why? Because you have to learn from what you left off the board or what you did play, and those things help you moving forward with this long college basketball season.
It is a long season, so while we won't dive into there's 3 games on the card here tonight, guys. We'll tell you what they are. No real opinion one way or the other from Ralph and I, but we start, of course, each show off with talking about some of those upsets from the weekend. And, Ralph, like you mentioned, there weren't all that many craziness going on here Saturday and Sunday.
In either, and on the very top you see there's 25 upsets Saturday and Sunday from dogs of 2.5 or more. I listed the top 7. None of those shocked me. DePaul was a team that had played a very weak schedule, was undefeated before hosting Buffalo and losing, and Notre Dame going down wasn't the biggest shock, and Arkansas State knocking off Tulsa as a 12.5-point dog wasn't one of those eye-opening, wow, how could that ever happen type games.
Yeah, there weren't. You look down this list, you're not really shaking your head at anything crazy other than you had 93-82. You did have a team get the 93 there in a home, but you're starting to see a lot of these site games now move away from those neutral sites, Ralph, and now we're really starting to dive into home and away court advantages, disadvantages.
Oh, absolutely. For the most part, those tournaments are over. We've seen the ACC play conference games, the Big Ten play conference games, and the Mountain West play conference games already. So as teams make adjustments, conference play is a whole different scenario. And, we're going to get into that. One of the biggest covers that we'll talk about in a minute was a conference game where San Jose State was getting almost 4 touchdowns and almost won that game outright.
Yeah, daggers, too, at the end there. Big 3-point shots doing getting the job done there. It's amazing what happens when you got some teams that can actually shoot. And, well, of course, we like to take a look at some of the standout performances from over the weekend here, Ralph. And nice little chart here. We got them broken down for both Saturday and Sunday, and DeAndre Williams leading the efforts there. How about that? Evansville, Miami, working on 37 points, 3 assists, 1 steal, 3 blocks. Not a bad job, Evansville. We just keep talking about Evansville this year too, don't we?
Yeah, good and bad. They started off with the upset of Kentucky, then they got picked off a few times, and they got a good win against Miami of Ohio. Again, some of those lesser competitions, you faced Bennington, Grambling. Elijah Hughes was the biggest surprise for me. What Syracuse did to Georgia Tech was probably the biggest surprise for me on the weekend.
Yep.
And that was a small upset. But, hell, there's been games where didn't Syracuse score 30 against Virginia? And Elijah Hughes put up 33, 5-4, 1-1. So, Sam Sessions, Binghamton, anytime you could put up 40 points in 43 minutes, obviously it was in an overtime game. But that 40-point barrier is pretty special in college basketball.
Yeah, and Sunday you had some guys, too. Jacob Davis in there, Eastern Washington, North Dakota. How about that? 39 points, Ralph. 5 assists, 5 steals. That's an all-around effort right there from Davison.
Yeah, and you know what? How many times have we mentioned Jacob Gillard already from Richmond? He may have only had 15 points, but when you have 15 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, and 6 steals, that to me is the most valuable player in the conference, no question. And again, why do we do this? Well, you become familiar with names. As kids get banged up, down the road, if all of a sudden, Gilliard is out for Richmond, you're going to be saying, oh my God, I really have to affect my power ratings in that game. So, you see yesterday some decent performances. Noah Gurley from Furman put up 29, 5, 1-1 against South Carolina Upstate, but still decent numbers. Obviously, fewer games on Sunday, so the performances don't quite match the Saturday games.
Nope, and of course you mentioned it as we take a look at some of these ATS covers here and totals. And Saturday, like you said, Syracuse, Georgia Tech at the top there, Ralph. My word, what a beatdown, 97-63. What was that line, 3?
They were a 3-point dog. Yeah, that was at Georgia Tech.
Yep.
Now, Georgia Tech's top player is out, and he's been out. He got hurt in the first game. He played a few minutes against Georgia, and, he'll be back coming up here in the next week or two. Joe, and one thing I do want to mention, as you talked about finals, you do have to pay close attention. Now, obviously, when some of the big guys are back, we'll give you a heads up. But once these finals are done, there's going to be kids that were ineligible for the first part of the year, and now will become eligible again. So that's something you certainly have to pay attention to. Jose Alvarado is the Georgia State kid who's only played 2 games, and when he's back, I have him as their top player. He'll make a difference in that lineup. But, once these kids come out of their quarters or semesters and kids weren't eligible for the first part of the year, there's going to be a handful of teams that improve quite a bit that have multiple players that'll be able to be eligible.
Yeah, and and it started too. Looking at this Ohio State team, a team that you, of course, have been very high on all year, Ralph. They are undefeated. They've beaten Villanova by 25 at home. They've beaten North Carolina by 25 on the road. And then they went ahead and just smacked down Penn State by 32 at home as well. I mean, those are 3 top 24 teams, Ralph, at least according to our friends at KenPom. And what the hell is going on with Ohio State? What's in those Wheaties there, Ralph? What's going on with this team?
Well, I think they were the first Big Ten team. ESPN had something on first Big Ten team since 2008 to score 100. And, to me, it's Chris Holtmann. I mean, what the guy did at Gardner-Webb was amazing, taking over a crappy team, getting them to 20 wins after a couple years. What he did at Butler, getting those kids to play, and then what he's done at Ohio State. Best coach. I tell you what, he's a top 10, probably a top 5 college basketball coach. And you add in talent. I mean, you had the Wesson brothers, and you had decent talent already. You were a very good team, but then you were one of the top recruiting classes, which Ohio State normally doesn't get. And then you also have 5-star recruits like their transfer at point guard. The transfer at point guard from Florida State took Florida State to an Elite 8 as a true frosh.
Right.
He transferred, sat out last year, and now he's playing. So you have those type of transfers coming in, sort of like in football. Add a top recruiting class and add Caleb Wesson, one of the best players in the Big Ten. Add a great coach, and you have certainly a team that is Final Four potential.
Yeah, not that hard to figure out, and it's interesting the things that pops out here, Ralph. You go to the unders here, and boy, Illinois Chicago is on the list again, huh? What a shock! We talk about Illinois Chicago never scoring any points. 62 to 49. That was a big 145.5 line, Ralph. That thing went under by 34.5 points. Like, what the hell is going on?
Well, Illinois Chicago is really not that slow of a tempo team. When you look at their KenPom numbers, they're like 174. But, there's 353 teams, so it's right in the middle. But, they find them that if they have a lead, they really start to play slow it down ball. Right. So you know, Steve McLean hasn't done that in the past, but back when he was in Wyoming, he did the same thing. He had some low scoring games. So, when they're behind, they play up tempo. When they have that lead, they tend to play from behind. And you see they had a 13-point lead, and Purdue, Fort Wayne, and Illinois State. So we have a lot of Indiana and Illinois there covered, don't we?
Yeah,
the Midwest with some low scores. So
big time. And that, of course, is Saturday. And then, Sunday we had, not the biggest card yesterday, but certainly, again, some very interesting, against the spread covers, both in the totals and the number.
Yeah, well, look at how unusual that is. We have 3 dogs as the biggest covers. And for the second time, I'm going to bring up the largest cover on the day was a team that actually was a 29-point dog and didn't win. Oof. San Jose State covered by 27 points. Mm-hmm. Went down to the final shot. San Diego State survives that game. But as I mentioned, we're now talking conference games, and that's where you can find some value. You have a situation where you've played a bizarre schedule of teams. You've played weak teams. You've played tough teams. You've played neutral games. And all of a sudden you play a conference game that is lined with what you did year to date, not lined like a conference opponent. Mm-hmm. You play each other multiple times a year. You're familiar with each other. San Jose State knows San Diego State's game plan. It's not like they have to work that hard to stop a very good team, but that's where you get some value with these dogs early on when we get these conference games snuck in here. So San Jose State and Wichita State knocking off Oklahoma State. I know that was cringing to your side a little bit.
Yes, it really was.
Northern Iowa took care of Colgate. So, it was, certainly a situation where you always think of the biggest covers being as a favorite or a dog, but as a favorite versus a dog, but not always the case.
It's interesting, too, Ralph. Purdue is another team that we've been talking about a lot here over the last couple of weeks, a team where we've seen them both in that blue section in the over, and here we are again in the under section. We had 125.5 line, under by 23.5, and Purdue seems to be one of those teams too, Ralph, where when they go into a second half with a lead, they have the ability to either speed it up a little bit or really slow it down. So it's very hard to get a read total wise on what Purdue is going to do.
No question. Obviously, we've seen them play slower, and they're still looking for someone to replace, Carson Edwards, and that's impossible to do. But, as they try to find that offensive sink, they rely on their defense. That Niagara and Colgate game that you see, Niagara was one of the largest covers. That was actually an overtime game, and I neglected to mark it. It went over by 33 points. They had 15 points scored in overtime. So in regulation, that would have been only an 18-point over. And, boy, I really did. It's Monday morning, isn't it? Yep. You see I have Niagara and Colgate, then I have Colgate Niagara. So, I have to learn from the database to pull out those duplicates. Because here's what happens. All I do is I put in a formula to get the biggest covers.
And it pulls it out.
And it has both teams. So I have to put in the team that won against the biggest covers. So, all right.
Not like you got Central Michigan onto the same thing. But that's all right. No big deal. We'll move on here because you do have another very interesting, Ralph, you've got another very interesting bit of information here. And again, only 3 games on the tap here tonight, guys. We'll tell you what they are, but of course, no real opinion one way or the other from Ralph and I on those games because it's more playing catch-up right now on this Monday as we approach December 9th, finals times going on with kids. But you sent over another little piece of interesting nuggets here, Ralph. Undefeated and winless college basketball teams through yesterday, December 8th. Interesting list this is here, Ralph.
Yeah, and, you look at it and, looking at the undefeated teams, if you look at the bottom, Obviously, San Diego State, Duquesne, and Liberty, all the way to the right, have played the 210, 326, and 350 schedule. Well, let's mention again, there's 353 teams. Liberty's played the number 350 schedule. So they're not a team you're going to have to worry about getting. Duquesne is a team playing tonight. Duquesne is an exciting young team who's headed in the right direction. We'll just mention them in a minute here coming up. But Auburn's played the number 92 schedule, Maryland 115, Butler 141, Ohio State 180. So while Ohio State has 3 very, very good wins, the rest of their schedule were against, you had Cincinnati in there too. They've had 4 good wins, but the 5 opponents they have dragged them down a little bit. But still, teams that are undefeated, I think give a little more effort. If they're in that close game, I think it means a lot to stay undefeated. And on the flip side, you see the winless teams so far. There's only 4. Obviously, Florida A&M and Houston Baptist have played the number 2 and number 8 schedule. Well, I'll tell you what, they're the same thing Texas Arlington used to always have to do. You have to play your money games. Anyone that's going to pay them to come play, they need the money for their program. Those teams are going to get beat. But you look at the other 2 teams, Central Connecticut played the 222 schedule and Kennesaw State played the 153. Those teams just suck.
Yep. And you can. It's so true too. A lot of very bad teams there, and in fact, you mentioned it there. Duquesne is actually going to be playing tonight, playing Columbia, who hasn't exactly been lighting them up this year either. Ralph, 11.5-point favorite, 134.5, I believe, is what the total is hanging around in that game. But it does appear tonight on the schedule, Ralph, that the one game most people are interested in, certainly from and limited with the total. We'll take a look at the market here price, but obviously limited with what you can play. Minnesota, Iowa, 8 o'clock here tonight. Ralph, seems to be the game that everyone's focusing on. Opened up as a total of 145. I'm seeing a lot of, it's inching up a little bit here, but Iowa, 6.5-point favorite. And it's even down to 5.5 in some books. So a little love for Minnesota, a team that you and I have talked about this year quite a lot as well. Very good team, maybe underrated team in some eyes, but Minnesota's a real team there in the Big Ten.
Well, yeah. Is there any shock which game's getting the money? Because you look at the other 2, and people can't even name the mascots for those the nicknames for the schools. So there's no question. But. It's a match. It's a match of the big guys. I mean, you may not have 2. The Big Ten really has centers. It's such a unique conference where there are multiple guys 6'9" that can score. I mean, Garza put up 44 against Minnesota, the 6'11" center for Iowa, and Minnesota, has Otero who can match up with him. So you really have a great matchup of big guys tonight. And, while there aren't many, I will mention this. We normally go through some trends and angles. I didn't know if I was going to have any. Minnesota is 1-14-1 over/under on the road. So, I mean, right there, Minnesota's a slower place defensive team. 1-14-1's a pretty powerful number. South Dakota is playing Alabama State. They have covered 5 straight at home as well. So, just a couple trends to look with tonight's game. But, that Minnesota game, certainly a contrast of styles. Iowa, when they have the ball, is a top 50 team on offense. They're about 100 overall if you look at their tempo. Minnesota's, one of the bottom 100. So they're in that lower level where, they played against Clemson and they put up 78, but that's not their normal team. They really got some nice runs and some breakouts against Clemson. I think you get some familiarity tonight. We don't have any. There's 2 things I would lean with. I'm not getting to the window with any game, so I don't want you guys jumping out and thinking, hey, these guys are giving opinions on these games. When we have games that we're actually betting and we like as best bets, we will let you know. There's a best bet segment. Again, with the limited card, we don't have that. But I lean Minnesota and the under, and I also lean Duquesne. Duquesne's an interesting team that has played a very weak schedule, but they're off to a 7-0 start. And what I love is Keith Dambrot was at Akron for a lot of years. And, that's when I used to live in Cleveland and go to the MAC championships. And I just love him as a coach. He's in his third year here. He took a team to 16-16 that was a losing team his first year, got him to 19-13 last year, has him to 7-0, and really read him the riot act after they just beat VMI and only won by 13. VMI is a team much worse than they're playing tonight in Columbia, and it was a game that was close, and they had to get fired up and made a couple threes and then played some defense and then ended up winning the game. Didn't cover but won by 13, but he read him the riot act even after that win. And those are the coaches and the teams that I like to look on when I'm playing. So, despite not having a play, I certainly lean Duquesne, Minnesota under, and Minnesota.
Yeah, problem is Columbia, guys, there's one guy. It's Mike Smith, the only guy that can score on this team. They don't have anybody else that can score. I think Ken Palm's got him wristed somewhere around 229 as far as offense goes. And when you rely on one guy, no matter how good, he's an upperclassman, he's a guard there. There's nothing. They don't have anything, especially going up against a team, like you said, 7-0 here, ranked number 78, I believe, in Ken Palm's overall standings there. So it is a big mismatch. I'm shocked it's only 11 and a half. It's at some places. I think the under is also definitely worth a look in that, too, at 132 and a half. But I'm looking forward to just kind of kicking back and watching this Iowa-Minnesota game because I like Minnesota. They can play defense. They can shoot. This is a good look into Big Ten basketball here tonight, Ralph, with this marquee game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think give the Big Ten credit. Grabbing a conference game. No one else is playing on Monday night.
Yep.
Grab all the TV and the headlines. In Minnesota, Minnesota might be 4-4, and you look at their record. Well, I will tell you this. The four teams they lost to have a combined record of 32-3.
Right, exactly.
You've lost Oklahoma, Butler, DePaul, and Utah. So you have nothing wrong. And you look at the team, and they only returned two starters. But to go with those two starters, they've brought in three transfers. And the name you're going to see tonight is Marcus Carr. He's a transfer for Pitt. He's averaging 14.5 points, almost 6 rebounds, 6.5 assists. Add that with a transfer from they got a transfer from Drexel. They got another transfer from a Power 5 school. So, he went the direction with the transfers, and it's paid off. So, Minnesota team much better than their 4-4 record.
Yep, that's it, guys. Limited schedule, though. Tomorrow we'll start inching back a little bit more. Then, of course, full schedules from pretty much here on out. But 3 games here tonight. Wanted to get you guys caught up with everything that happened over the weekend and take a little peek ahead. And as far as Ralph and I are concerned, it's going to kick back and watch geriatric football for a little while tonight and watch like throwback circa 2003 and maybe watch Eli Manning throw a pass or two and flip back and forth and watch Minnesota and Iowa do battle. Hell, even watch Columbia throw up all over themselves. Light night here, but it's going to be fun. And, of course, we'll be back again tomorrow. And we'll get to do it all over again. We'll break down those 3 games. We'll take a look at what's ahead. Of course, providing as much information as humanly possible to help you guys make it a profitable college basketball season. And it's going to be fun, Ralph. A lot of great things ahead here in the college basketball slate coming up.
Yeah, looking at tomorrow's card, Indiana, UConn, Louisville, Texas Tech, Butler, Baylor, Nevada, BYU, Northern Iowa, Colorado. There are a good number of cards. Hey, guys, and, Joe and I say it all the time. Something else you want to see on the show, something different, just comment. Reach out to us. This is your show.
Yep.
We're just in the infancy of it. We love doing it, and I guess you can't gauge the show from today if this is your first show because there's some segments that are missing because of it. But stay tuned tomorrow, watch a complete show, and anything you want to see added, make sure you let us know.
Yep, keep us posted here, guys. Let us know what kind of information you're looking for, and we will certainly provide it for you. So on behalf of Ralph Michaels, I'm Joe Raineri. It is the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show powered by WagerTalk.com. Make sure you get to WagerTalk.com today, guys. All and everything you'll ever need in order to be a profitable sports investor in one place at WagerTalk.com. Ralph, good luck to you, brother. Enjoy the games here tonight. We'll talk again tomorrow.
Talk to you in 23, Joe.